Greetings from Columbia Business School Executive Education. I'm Lindsay Machula, and I'm here today with Sheena Iyengar for today's webinar, The Art of Thinking Bigger, Unleashing Out-of-the-Box Ideas. Before I introduce Sheena, I'd like to go over a few quick logistics. As you'll see on the screen, a copy of this webinar will be recorded and sent to you. Please follow us on LinkedIn for the latest news and updates by searching for Columbia Business School Executive Education. And finally, please submit your questions using the Q&A box as we move through the webinar. We will get to as many of those as possible. It's now my pleasure to introduce Sheena, who is the St. Lee Professor of Business at Columbia Business School and a world-renowned expert on choice, decision-making, and innovation. She has many award-winning books, one being The Art of Choosing, and also Think Bigger, How to Innovate. And her TED Talks have been watched by nearly 8 million people. They've also shaped how we understand decision science. Think Bigger received the 2023 Innovation Award, and she has endorsements from Bloomberg and Satya Nadella, among others. She's been named to Thinker's 50 list of top global management thinkers and has advised many companies, just to name a few, Google, Deloitte, and JP Morgan. And today we're going to be talking about the Think Bigger method, which is a 6-step method for generating breakthrough ideas. Her research is also featured in many publications such as the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and The Economist, and she continues to influence markets, businesses, and leaders worldwide. Welcome, Sheena. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Welcome, everybody. It's wonderful thank you so much for taking part of your lunch to think and talk about Think Bigger. So think back to the last time you had your best idea. Where were you and what were you doing? If you're like most of us, you were probably on a jog or doing some form of exercise, or maybe you were taking a shower, or maybe you were coming out of a nap. And at that moment, when you had that flash of insight, it was amazing. It was a really, really good feeling, particularly when you discovered later that it worked out, which is why you're remembering it now. It turns out that only about 20% of those wonderful flashes of insight actually work out. And that's actually really good and useful, and we should hold on to it. After all, our brains do that naturally, so never let that go. But what if I were to tell you that not only could you get those flashes of insight more on command, but that we could also give you the tools so that more of those flashes of insight would work out for you, for your team, for your company. And that's what Think Bigger is all about. Think Bigger answers the question, how do we get our best ideas? How do we create those winning combinations that enable us to both solve a problem that we have, but to do it in a way that also helps differentiate ourselves from all the other solutions that exist in the marketplace of ideas? So, I've been teaching Think Bigger now for over 13 years. And this course, this method, is science-based. It's based on decades of research in neuro and cognitive science. And it shows you that there is a science to it. It isn't just magic, and that we can actually teach you how to get your best ideas. So here are the 6 steps. So, as Einstein once said, if I had an hour to save the planet, I would spend the first 55 minutes thinking about the problem and the last 5 minutes thinking about the solution. So if you look at step 1, step 2, step 3, they're all about really understanding what's the problem I'm trying to solve. Turns out 72% of corporate strategies fail because they didn't do a good job of really understanding their problem. They end up solving the wrong thing. So in Think Bigger, it starts with really thinking through, how do I want to define this problem? What are the key challenges that I must address? Break it down. Third, who are my stakeholders and what really matters to these stakeholders and which ones must I for sure accommodate in order to have a meaningful solution. Let's compare wants. Step 4, search in and out of the box. We all have the go-to strategy when we have a problem, which is to call up our friends, look around. What are my competitors doing? And that's all good because you never want to do worse than what you already know in your industry. Then, if they don't have a real solution, what do you do? Where do you go? And so, search in and out of the box shows you how to actually think out of the box. And the way we do it is by giving you the strategies by which you actually go into other boxes, meaning totally other places to search for meaningful strategies that can help you search for a solution. So we look at other industries, we look at other points in history to help you identify strategies that can give you an advantage. Sort of like Reed Hastings did when he learned from Amazon and from Planet Fitness ways to give you home entertainment that nobody'd ever thought of before, and ways to create a business model for giving you home entertainment that nobody thought of before. Then we look at, well, how do you take all these pieces, gather them up, and now create a combination that effectively addresses the problem you're trying to solve? That's what we call choice mapping. And finally, the last step is what we call the third eye. Do you see what I see? We all know it's really, really difficult to be able to predict how any idea is going to do. And 9 out of 10 startups, as we know, fail. 80% of mergers fail. But what if there was a better way to at least increase our odds to be able to do a better job of predicting and understanding how people will see my idea? And that's what the third eye is. It's a set of ways in which we train you to collect feedback so that you get a better sense of what exactly are people seeing, hearing, feeling when they first confront your idea. Now, in Think Bigger, thanks to the fact that we now have thousands of alums, we had this wonderful opportunity in the last few months where a couple of the Think Bigger alums came back to me and said, you know what? We can actually create a generative AI companion that goes with the Think Bigger method to make it actually easier for people to apply and essentially think bigger in action. And so in the last 6 months, we've actually been doing that. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about Think Bigger, it does come along so that as you're learning the method, you get access to a special generative AI software, the Think Bigger software that accompanies this course. Now, this generative AI software is not a chat GPT. This is an example of what we call co-intelligence, where it's you interacting with a choice architecture that helps you leverage everything that exists in the World Wide Web so that you can actually improve the quality of your ideas. I'm going to give you just one quick example that we just did recently without giving you names or the final idea. I was working with a company in the jewelry industry. And so they used the software after learning the method, and they were trying to say, well, how do I come up with a brand new jewelry line that's not in the romance space? And so they broke it down, they thought of their stakeholders, and they're saying, well, how do we come up with a jewelry line that's customized, that's timeless, and that every individual that would want? So they stumble upon this idea through seeing what happens. It gives them the idea of, well, what about basing it on people's values so that they almost have a piece of jewelry that speaks to their identity? And so then, using the software in line with step 4 about searching in and out of the box, it takes you on a journey. And so you can look at, well, what are strategies that other companies in my industry, like Tiffany, like Pandora, are doing? Shows you that. What are strategies that companies in adjacent industries are doing? And it shows you that, like color forecasting, for example. What are strategies that are being used that are completely out of the box? Like, you remember that Nobel Prize winning scientist, Marie Curie Foundation? What did they do? Egyptians, what did they do with jewelry? Um, so it gives you all kinds of strategies, and also enables you to read up about it, learn about it. And then it helps you create different ideas. You can create many, many, many ideas. And finally, they ended up picking. The ideators are the ones who choose based on the information they get in their own minds, choose a winning idea, or what they felt would be a winning idea. And so they're creating a new jewelry line, which would be customized, sustainable, at different price points. First, you would do a values survey. And then after you fill out the value survey, it would kind of give you a piece of jewelry, set of stones, materials, etc., design that would speak to those values. You would get to help iterate on it. And voila, you'd have a piece of jewelry. So that just gives you one example, one flavor of what it can do. But we have worked with companies that have been interested in looking at all kinds of questions, from designing new products to how do I save my business given the new potential tariffs.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for explaining the concept of Think Bigger, Sheena, and also providing an example. We would love to get into some questions that the audience had submitted. And we'll start with one from Karina, who says, how can we break down very complex problems into smaller, more concrete ones?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, because I would say that the reason why 72% of companies often end up getting the wrong solution for their problem is they essentially assume the problem is self-evident, jump to solutions, assuming everybody agrees on what the problem is and agrees on what the solution is. You really want to take your time to understand from everybody's perspective, what are all the challenges? That doesn't mean you're going to solve for all of those challenges, but you at least want to know what all the challenges are, so that you can begin to see which ones to prioritize, which ones are less important. And you want to gather the perspective of those challenges from not just the people at the top, but to get it from people from different parts of an organization, both in and out.
Wonderful. The next question is from Kadar, and he says, what are the correct steps to implementing and executing big ideas?
So when we have a big idea, the first thing you want to recognize, right, is that people don't like change. There's always a cost to change. And so if you have a big idea and you want to make sure it's an idea that you can justify why it would work, you've thought through all the ways in which it could go wrong. Just keep in mind, the more radical the idea, the harder it is going to be to implement it. So the first thing you want to do is identify who within an organization is your influencer. That doesn't mean someone who necessarily has all the authority. Could be, but often the real influence agents are not people that have all the power. It's someone who just has everybody's trust, happens to know everybody. If you start with people that are your influencers, and if you get buy-in from them, that actually makes it a lot easier in the execution and implementation process.
Those are great tips. We actually had somebody submit a question live that I would love to have you follow up on, and it's from Juan Carlos, and he says, is there any research that demonstrates if we get better ideas as an individual or as a group?
That is a phenomenal question. So I know that our go-to strategy when we have a problem and we don't know the answer is to walk up to a bunch of people and say, let's huddle and have a brainstorming session. I want to give you just one revision to that. I want you to first tell everybody what's the problem and have everybody first think by themselves, even if it's for just 5 minutes. Think by themselves. How would they define the problem? Why does that problem exist? And if they have a strategy or two for solving it. Those 3 questions, have them first think by themselves so that when they share, you can ensure that they're going to be coming at it from multiple perspectives. By doing it this way, you will add to both the diversity of how people are seeing the problem and defining it, and the diversity of strategies. The problem when you go with the brainstorming right out the gate is whoever talks first, everybody builds on that person's ideas.
There's a couple of questions that also came in, and one is an interesting follow-up to that. So if somebody is struggling to connect the dots to see the big picture, how can you help those people kind of get aligned with what you're thinking?
Oh my God, it's an awful experience. I can tell you, whether it's trying to get your kid to eat vegetables, trying to fix a paper, trying to fix a lecture, trying to fix my startup. It's terrible. You'll have all the pieces there. You'll know you're close, but you don't know what to do and what's wrong and what's good. What do you do? And there's essentially 2 things you can do. The first is you got to step back, get away from all those details. You can, don't lose them, but put them aside. Get yourself in front of a whiteboard or a white space and ask yourself, what is the problem I'm actually trying to solve? Now, I know when you're going to say that, what's the problem we're going to try to solve? Your head's going to go back to mind wandering to all the pieces you have. No. Now ask yourself, who else would have had to have solved this problem? Who else would have had to have solved this problem? What other point in history? What other kind of industry? Who else? What kind of person? That, if you just give yourself that prompt, many times your mind will start going in other directions such that you now know where to search, where to look, who to pick up the phone and call, what research to do, which can actually pull you out of your rut. The second thing you can do, let's imagine you did that, it didn't work. You're still stuck. Now, the second thing you can do is actually go and talk to people that are not in your echo chamber, totally different people from totally different worlds. And you don't ask them, how do you solve your specific problem? They'll say, oh, I don't have any expertise. You take that problem you have and you word it in a way that whoever they are might understand it. So they're not going to be able to give you the exact solution to your problem, but they're going to be able to give you tips and strategies for how to think about it, how to reframe it. Because a lot of times it's the reframing that gets you to the new way of combining those pieces. In the end of the day, you either have the right pieces and you just need a new way to recombine them, or you're missing a piece. And what you have to do is go out and find what that missing piece is, and then you can finally combine.
I hope everyone's taking notes. That was excellent. Wonderful. Well, next question is from Bobby, and he said, how do you get the management and the team to realize that thinking big is not exponentially more work so that they'll embrace it?
So, look, thinking is always work, right? So the real question that I'm going to turn that question around and say, how do you make it so that people want to do it, that it's motivating, it's inspiring, I love it? And I think a lot of times, if you simply tell people, here's a problem, solve it, that's intimidating, mainly because we don't even know how to begin. I think if you structure it and say, look, here's the problem, here are the challenges, Here's the criteria we're looking for. I think when people feel that they're being given a structure, a path, I think they're much more likely to lean in. That's true whether you're talking about kids or adults.
Great. We also have a question from Chris, and he says, how does one determine which ideas have the highest expected return?
So look, I'd be worth trillions of dollars if I could answer that question. I mean, even the political pundits on TV, they don't really do any better than you and me at predicting when's going to be our next geopolitical crisis and who's going to win. But here's what we do when I'm teaching people how to predict their ideas. So when you have an idea, whatever your idea is, in your head, it sounds really good. It's up here, it's amazing, I'm on top of the world, it's great. And then I go out, I describe my idea to somebody, and they're like, they don't get it, or they give me a pat on the back. We think, oh, see, they saw how great I was. The first most important step, which we often take for granted, is you got to make sure that they actually understand your idea in the way you have it up here. Don't assume that. Don't assume you described it in a way they see it the way you see it. So when you describe your idea, don't ask them whether they like it or they don't like it. Figure out what they understood. Go up to them later. Definitely don't do it in the moment. Later and say, hey, how would you solve this problem? Or how would you reimagine my idea? So don't make it feel like a test. But what you're really doing is seeing what they heard, what stuck out, what did they remember? And when they modified what you said, did they modify it in a way that actually made it interesting? Better? That's what you're learning. When you get to the point where other people are describing your idea in the way you have up here, that's when you have alignment between what you see and what they see. That's when it makes sense to find out if they actually like or dislike your idea, not before that.
Great advice. We have another question from Abdul Hamid, who says, what is the best technique to test the idea, and how do we stop it when it's not worth it anymore?
So that's a great question. Again, I can give you some advice based on scientific studies, but can we fully answer your question with 100%? No. So, the saying that, we often say, oh, well, they had the wrong idea. We actually don't know the difference between the wrong idea or an idea that came into the marketplace too early. Kind of both the same. If there's already a marketplace flooded with a lot of X, whatever X happens to be, maybe at the moment it's LLMs, then probably creating a brand new LLM, unless it's got a totally different approach, it's a little late, right? And so how do you know if you've got a good idea? What you're doing is you're seeing through independent observations, meaning you don't ask a crowd and have everybody see what everybody else is doing or saying. What you do is you have an idea and you see how do different people respond. And when they say they don't like X, which they inevitably will, or they like X, whether they like it or they don't like it is irrelevant. What you really want to know is the why. If everybody is telling you they don't like X and they're giving you the same reason, that's probably a good reason then to either edit or pivot. If the opinions are all over the map, what you want to know is there an underlying thing? And if there is, you probably want to either edit or pivot.
Wonderful. So we've been talking about accepting ideas on the individual level, and we have a couple of questions that I've seen come through about accepting ideas in your organization. One question from Bobby is, how does the organization's openness, vision, and willingness to foster innovation or problem solving play into the outcome of processes like this and their execution?
It plays a very big role, right? The more bureaucratic you are, the more micromanagey you are, people just aren't motivated to take ownership. And so they're not going to help as much. I mean, what you really want for creative problem solving is for everybody to be engaged. So you really want to develop practices so that even if you disagree with somebody, you want to be able to get everybody to want to think, want to contribute, feel heard, and yet when they're going off in the wrong direction, be able to redirect.
And what about, Sheena, if you're a new person coming into an organization and you have a lot of big ideas that you want to implement, when is the right time to initiate that change
For you, the new person?
for the new person?
Yeah. So, I'm reminded of a story about President Eisenhower. So before becoming president of the United States, he was president here of Columbia University. And this is from 1948 to 1953. Now, at that time, if you came into Columbia, we actually had a lot more lawns than we have right now. And everyone was telling Eisenhower, oh, don't you think we should build paths for students to walk on? And there were so many different ideas for where you should build the paths. And Eisenhower is looking at all these paths and they all seem kind of equally good, but he doesn't know what to choose. And so he sits on it. People are kind of getting annoyed at him. And then one day, when he walks into a low library, this groundsman comes up to him and he says, Mr. President, you come to the window right now. And he goes to the window and the groundsman says, take a look. Look at all that riffraff that's ruining our lawns. And Eisenhower says, they're showing us where to build the paths. What you want to do, there's always a bazillion ways in which you can make your life better, the world better, take your pick. And they're all good ideas. But there's a huge cost to change and it may not be worth it. What you want to do is find those opportunities where rather than fighting against you, they're going to want to help you because they're already kind of doing it. You're making it easier.
Thank you for that, Sheena. I know that we're coming up here on time, and I want to leave everyone with one thought, which is what can people do today to get started on a journey to testing out new ideas and being more innovative and kind of pushing their own personal boundaries? Gina,
Mhm.
what can people do today to push their personal boundaries when it comes to innovation?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you were asking them. Okay.
Okay.
I think a really good thing for everybody to be able to do is you find one thing that you don't normally do. And maybe you have a mild interest in it. Maybe it's something you don't have any interest in it, but kind of feel like you should learn about it. Something that takes you out of your comfort zone and experience it. What it'll do is it will give you new bits of information, new ways of thinking, new essentially boxes that you can go into to find interesting things. So for me, for example, what I do is, yeah, I'm blind, so art isn't exactly my wheelhouse. But what I will do every few months is I'll go on an art tour and get to learn what's going on in the art galleries. And what I'm really doing there is obviously I'm not going there to experience the beauty of this art. What I'm doing is learning. How are people thinking about art? What's on their minds? And does this tell me something about what the future is? That's just one example, but find something that takes you out of your comfort zone.
That's great advice. Sheena, we're at time and we want to thank you for sharing all of these inspiring ideas today about Think Bigger, innovation and decision making. We are really looking forward to your upcoming program, Think Bigger, Start Choosing Innovative Solutions, coming up June 3 to 6 in person in New York City on our brand new Manhattanville campus. For everybody on the call today, thank you so much for joining. Please be on the lookout for more information in your email about the Think Bigger program, as well as this webinar. And on behalf of Columbia Business School Executive Education, we'd like to thank you for your time today. Have a great day.
Thank you.